It's about 1:45 in the morning here, so pardon me if I look exhausted, but I made you guys a promise and I really wanted to talk about the fights as soon as they ended, and literally they just ended right now.
Bang, coming for the top, got the game in the lock. Every time that I drop, know I gotta go bang. I'ma keep it hot, know that I can never stop. Keeping everything I got, I'ma make it go bang.
I didn't expect, nor did anybody else expect the fights to really be this long and go this far and have so many long drawn out battles. There was much anticipation leading up to this card. A lot of it didn't necessarily come into fruition. Some of it did, but also a lot of unforeseen drama that actually occurred here. Sorry guys, I apologize if I look half dead. I'm just so tired, but I'm here to break this down for you. So we're gonna start right away from the prelims. Honestly, Dominick Cruz came back in top form after being gone on such a hiatus for so long. He looked in tip-top shape. His footwork looked impeccable. His cardio was actually really impressive considering he hasn't really been fighting and active for the last year and a half. But actually Dominick Cruz is one of the ones that firmly believes that there's actually no such thing as ring rust if you are training properly, and he kind of proved his point, beating a very tough Casey Kenny. I'm hoping he comes back sooner than later and fights another top-tiered opponent just to see if he can make one more final title run before he calls it quits on his MMA career and turns it over to commentating. Not a fan of. Then we look at Joseph Benavidez' fight. I feel like, unfortunately, the former champion got fed to the wolves when fighting a very top tier, just reaching into his prime, Askar Askarov, coming from this Dagestani wrestling background. When you're fighting a guy like that, especially Benavidez, who's kind of like weathered by the MMA career that he's had, coming off all those losses, and of course all those wins too, those long drawn out battles, it wasn't a matter of if he was going to lose, it was kind of a matter of when and how he was going to lose. No disrespect whatsoever. I'm still a big fan favorite, but of course I think you're kind of just fallen off now. He kind of laid the groundwork for that as well, because before his fight he did mention how he's not going to be fighting for the title anymore to kind of relieve that pressure of his fighting, even though it didn't turn out the way he wanted it to, and he just wants to fight for the sake of the love of the sport. But there's got to be a time, especially you having a family, where you kind of have to cut the ties with that as well, because you're just incurring too much damage that might actually affect your quality of life going forward. Now we're going to go to the main card. The first card was supposed to be this huge light heavyweight clash between two of the hugest light heavyweights in the division, Alexander Rakic and Thiago Santos, both with amazing fight IQ, especially in the stand-up game with their kickboxing. Now, Thiago Santos, I felt he started off a lot more patient than he usually was. But then after a while, I felt like it wasn't necessarily his patience, it was more his nerves and his nerves to commit, because he was coming off 2 straight losses. And of course, this would have been his third, and of course was successfully, not for him, his 3rd defeat in a row. So I think he was weary of that and playing in the back of his mind. Also, I think the knee injuries that he sustained in the John Jones fight, having those operations in both of his knees, could have played a big factor as well, and he's not able to cut off angles and close that distance as well as maybe he used to in the past. However, Alexander Rakic, I feel, should have taken advantage of this, and in the post-fight he said he purposely didn't because he understands those knee injuries. I'm doing air quotes because he's completely full of shit, because he couldn't close the distance, his counters weren't strong, he was using the leg kicks but then stepping away from the leg kicks, which didn't make too much sense, and I just felt he didn't use his wrestling game, which he could have, or his jiu-jitsu game, which if you were so worried about someone's knee but you wanted to put on an amazing performance, then why wouldn't you just take him down and utilize your wrestling, your ground and pound, and maybe inevitably getting that submission victory? I don't know why his coach gave him the brown belt post-victory like that. I'm not saying he's not deserving of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. I just think the way the fight played out, it was like terrible timing, and DC's comments also kind of reiterated that as well. The next fight was Islam Makhachev, which is basically the protege, the big protege of newly crowned coach Khabib Nurmagomedov, going up against a very tough and game Drew Dober. Now, this was one of those things. There was so much hype about Islam Makhachev, and although he doesn't care because he doesn't know who I am, but I'm super proud of him because there was a lot of hype behind him, and sometimes that could really affect you in a negative way as a fighter or any type of performer at all. When someone like Khabib is saying, oh, he's the best, he's going to run the lightweight division, and then everybody's saying, obviously Islam's going to win. Just how is he going to win? It's going to put a lot of pressure on you, and he totally walked through that pressure. Of course, course, him not being unfamiliar to the fight game, being a Sambo champion, and of course, this being his 20th MMA fight, he was no slouch and he was prepared for everything that Drew Dober had to offer. I think Drew Dober was so set on obviously landing that big bomb as well that he just totally negated any of his other game plan and was susceptible to takedowns pretty much at will. You know, you could train for someone like that, but until you have someone like that really trying to take the life from you and really trying to like best you, you really don't know what it's like. Because in training camp, you're trying to best each other, but at the same time, you want what's best for each other and you don't want to implement too much damage because you want to be able to last another day. Where when you're going up against Islam, who's trying to rip your face off, it's not the exact same pressure that you would experience in training camp. Islam really lived up to the hype, and I'm super, I can't even talk. I'm such a super fan of his right now, just as I was and still am of Khabib Nurmagomedov, and I'm just so excited to see who he's gonna fight next. He's kind of hinting at those Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje matchups, and I wouldn't be opposed to seeing those because I think he is ready, especially for someone like Tony Ferguson, who's coming off of 2 back-to-back losses. So I don't think he's in the title talk anymore. I think this would be a perfect opportunity, or even maybe set him up with Dan Hooker. Hopefully inevitably get that title shot at the end of 2021, which is what Khabib thinks is going to happen. Next fight is the first title fight of the night, which is Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan. Now, I had Aljamain Sterling winning, and yes, he did win, but no one could foresee him winning in such a dramatic fashion. First of all, I think Aljamain Sterling went out there with so much anxietal energy, if anxietal is even a word, too much energy, and I feel like he wasn't trained on being able to contain that energy properly. Because yes, this is his first title fight, but it's not his first mainstream fight, and I feel like he should have been able to contain his excitement a lot better than he did. Him by himself, he threw like 7 spinning back techniques and none of them worked, and 3 of those ended up in Petr Yan getting Aljamain Sterling's back. Also, Aljamain Sterling was so sloppy in my opinion, and he fell numerous times by himself trying to throw crazy bizarre techniques that didn't really make sense at the time, nor were even close to landing. I feel like he did win the first 2 rounds, absolutely, but he totally exerted all of his energy, and then the later 2 rounds where Petr Yan basically took over with a sharp, precise, sniper-like boxing, and only when Aljamain got illegally kneed by Petr Yan, which who's to say if it was an accident or not, that's when things fell apart and Aljamain Sterling was crowned the new champion, unfortunately. Unfortunately, both for Petr Yan and unfortunately both for Aljamain Sterling, for numerous reasons. Aljamain's the champion, but obviously he doesn't want to be the champion like that, and no one will ever classify him as the champion, which is why he threw the belt on the ground. Now, I do think Aljamain needs to get back in there right away, and I'm glad that they didn't let the fight continue as well exactly when they stopped it. I totally agree with it, which most people are not going to agree with it, but it was a very solid knee. Now, could he have been milking it? Okay, maybe, but the fact of the matter is that it was an illegal knee. As a professional athlete, as the champion, going in there throwing that illegal technique, you also don't deserve to win based off a technique that you know is 100% wrong. Now, apparently his corner gave him some bad advice, but still, you as a professional athlete, you've seen these fights. You've experienced them firsthand numerous times. I think you should have known that that was by far an illegal technique, and you should have held that one back. For all the haters at home that say Aljamain Sterling was milking it, maybe, but you know what? It was a very solid knee, so who are we to say? He was the one in there risking his life. He was getting fatigued as well, so the damage could have just magnified because he was already gassed out as well. Aljamain Sterling, I wish you nothing but the best, and I can't wait to see you come back in tip-top form. Petr Yan as well, I can't wait to see you back in tip-top form as well. I think a rematch is definitely warranted for both of them, just to really solidify who is the true champion. And I kind of think this is a freebie for Aljamain, because Aljamain had a very, very bad game plan, and I think he needs to come back now that he respects, hopefully, Petr Yan's takedown ability and his strength, and definitely sharpens up his game plan for the rematch to come, because he definitely needs a lot of work. Now we're going to go to the co-main event, which is the featherweight women's title, where Amanda Nunes was defending her belt against the new contender, Megan Anderson. Now, I told you guys in the pre-fight analysis, that Megan Anderson was only getting this fight by default, so I kind of felt bad for her, and unfortunately, she's such a sweetheart, but that totally conveyed properly as I said it would. Now, am I a guru? No, I'm not, but it was just a mismatch just before the bell even rung. Amanda Nunes is huge, and Megan Anderson was so timid, so scared. She knew before the first technique was even thrown by Amanda that she didn't belong in there, and she totally just lost the fight before she even stepped in there, and I kind of felt bad for her. She got caught with some heavy bombs that wobbled her right away. Amanda Nunes took her down and easily could have grounded and pounded her, sorry, my apologies, but you could just tell that she wanted more of a challenge, so that's why she wanted to finish it with a creative submission, because it could have just been finished there and there with hectic ground and pound, that's for sure. Amanda Nunes, I can't wait to see what's next for you. I think what's next for you is one of two fights. One's not going to happen because Scott Coker doesn't believe in the cross promotions. Sorry, he does believe in the cross promotions. It's Dana White that doesn't want to do that with Scott Coker, but I definitely think the fight to make is the Cyborg and Amanda Nunes rematch, and I know people are going to hate me for that because she got knocked out in the first one against Amanda Nunes, but losing that quickly via knockout doesn't really prove too much. Now, before you say, Jesse, you're an idiot, and whilst I would agree with you, please hear why. Because nobody said that when GSP got knocked out against Macera in the first minute and a half of their fight. And then look what happened in the immediate rematch. Nobody thought that when Cain Velasquez got knocked out on UFC on Fox 1 against Junior Dos Santos, losing his heavyweight title right away, and then coming back, and for the following 10 rounds that they fought, Cain Velasquez absolutely obliterated Junior Dos Santos. Am I saying that Cyborg would come back and obliterate Amanda Nunes? No. But what I am saying is 45 seconds of a fight does not truly depict the difference of fighting abilities, who's the better fighter, who's the worst fighter. Sometimes there needs to be more of a storyboard to happen during the fight to see what these fighters are made of and to truly define who is the best of the best. Now, the final fight we're going to talk about is, the middleweight champion, Israel Adesanya, going up to fight Jan Błachowicz. Now, I sat here and told you that I thought it would be a very, very easy fight for Israel Adesanya, and still, when I watched it, I feel like it still could have been, even though he lost via unanimous decision, and rightfully so. I think Israel Adesanya had the tool set to really piece apart Jan Błachowicz, and I feel like he didn't really implement that too much. I felt like he was subtly showboating a little bit, which he actually fell victim to 2 amazing takedowns because of that showboating as well in the later rounds, but we'll get to that in 1 second. He was able to find his jab after a little while. Jan Błachowicz, I felt like should have stuck with that body kick, even though he didn't need it. He won by unanimous decision anyways, but it was because of those takedowns. Because in the stand-up war, Izzy was besting him in the first 2 rounds, and I think he really should have pushed the pace more, because then when they in the actual engaged in the toe-to-toe combat, it showed what kind of chin and what kind of thug that Israel Adesanya truly is. He was there and he was able to bang, and he wore some of Jan's best shots, and he stayed there in the pocket and didn't get rubbered once, which is a true testament to what kind of abilities, what kind of chin, what kind of heart, and what kind of cardio this guy has to fight somebody who's clearly walking around at probably 30 to 40 pounds more than Israel Adesanya is. And that weight truly made the difference in this fight as well, when Israel was on his back, holding a very top heavy Jan Błachowicz on top of him. I do think that Israel Adesanya, a couple things, should never come back to light heavyweight, because his body frame is significantly too small. Even though he didn't wear the damage, the point was he just wasn't physically strong enough to really manipulate the fighters and move him where they need to be. Again, not because he's still the middleweight champion and he can still defend that crown there and hopefully clean the lineup as he's promised. I do think he needs to be humbled a little bit after these fights and realize that one of the sole reasons why he did lose his fight is because he was cocky. In the 5th round too, he lost that right away because he was kind of pretending he was rubbered and kind of doing a little dance. And while he was doing that, Jan Błachowicz, rightfully so, shot in for the takedown, got the double leg, and took advantage of him for the rest of the round and just ground and pound him, and inevitably letting Israel lose a 2-point round there, which was a help to the scorecards, giving Jan Błachowicz the nod and him retaining his light heavyweight championship. I just think sometimes he needs to calm down and still be focused on the fight at hand and less about the showmanship that's going outside, maybe for the fans or the viewers at home. So having said that, I hope we see you stronger in your next middleweight title defense, and I hope you're a little more humble and a little more focused on the task at hand. Having said that, the one thing about this fight is I truly hope that this Jon Jones and Israel Adesanya fight stops immediately. The conversation needs to be over because Israel Adesanya will not have a chance in hell against Jon Jones. So Israel really needs to stop that chatter because it's just not going to work out for him in his favor. And it just goes to attest that there is such a curse when you call out Jon Jones. Johnny Walker did it and he lost his next fight. Chris Weidman came up to light heavyweight division and he lost his next fight. Luke Rockhold came up to light heavyweight division and he lost his next fight. Israel Adesanya, the same thing. Every time somebody calls out Jon Jones for some reason, saying that they're the next one to beat him, they always lose their next fight. Luckily for Izzy, it wasn't in devastating fashion, but nonetheless, you guys just need to keep your mouth shut, run your division, and prove to the world that you are the GOAT before making these crazy claims like you've been making in the past. Guys, thank you so much. I'm sorry if I sound dead. I am on my way to bed after I edit this video, so I'll still be up for a little bit. We truly love you guys. Please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button below. Leave a comment. Let me know if you agree with me or if you don't agree with me. Let me know what fight matchups that you want to see next for these guys. Frankly, I don't even know where some of them go from here. Thiago Santos, what's going to happen from here? 3 losses in a row. It doesn't really make sense to even for him to fight even like a big name, to be honest, in my opinion. Islam, we already broke that down. Megan Anderson, unfortunately, we're not sure where she goes from here. I kind of think it makes sense for her if she can drop down to the 135, because I think 145 is going to be closed. I think Megan should fight the loser of the Holly Holm and Juliana Pena fight, but that's my personal opinion. I think Amanda Nunes, since she's not going to fight Cyborg, should do that 3rd rematch against Valentina Shevchenko. I think Islam Makhachev, we already spoke about that. Drew Dober needs to go back to the drawing board. As for the finals, Israel Adesanya, for his first middleweight title defense, should absolutely be the winner of Paulo Costa and Robert Whittaker, because honestly, frankly, there is nobody else right now. And then, of course, for Jan Błachowicz, his first title defense in the light heavyweight division, again, an almost obsolete division, and I'm not really sure where he's gonna go from here, but let me know below what you guys think. Thank you so much. I love you guys. Like, share, subscribe, comment, dislike, don't matter to us. We just want the engagement. We want your feedback. We want to know how to get better. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we're gonna see you guys next week. Peace.
Bang, coming for the top, got the game in the lock. Every time that I drop, know I gotta go bang. I'ma keep it hot, know that I can never stop. Keeping everything I got, I'ma make it go bang. Better than the best, I'ma tell it with my chest. I don't got no time to rest, now they know what I'm saying. Everybody know I'm coming next, I'ma leave it in a mess. If they wanna test, I'ma make it bang. Step into the mind of a young man with the plan.